We have Gordon Wittenmyer, the Cincinnati Enquirer. We're going to ask you all of our Reds questions. So, all right, Eric.
I've heard them all, and I have all the answers.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Then.
I'm glad
his tree's still up, Eric.
Yeah, what the heck?
My trees are still up too.
Well, what's wrong with that? It's still holiday season. It's still January.
So how long does a tree stay up?
Well, it depends on who gets their way, me or my wife.
And
I'd leave it up till I leave for spring training.
But then but then the needles start falling off, and it's a fire hazard.
It's still great.
Okay.
It still smells good.
Well, that's good. If it smells good, that's what Hannah said. In New York, they throw them all away, and Hannah and it smells kind of like.
And the streets of New York smell like Christmas in early January.
For like 2 days out of the entire year, it smells all right.
Hey, Gordon, I got a question. I don't know if you heard exactly what we were saying, but Hannah had brought up the Jeimer Candelario signing, and when he had signed the 3-year, $45 million contract, my mind went to, do they really – because you would think you'd look at this team and say, hey, you need this money for starting pitching. Or do they not really quite believe in certain players being that everyday impact, and they know they have that with a Candelario signing?
Yeah, I think what they don't believe in – put it this way. I think what they believe is that they can't bank on all of them coming back and building what they did last year. Remember, like Noelvi Marte, he's got he came up in August, and Encarnacion Strand came up in July. Ellie De La Cruz came up June 6th, had a terrific first month to 5 weeks, and then was statistically, at least in terms of getting on base and hitting, was one of the worst players in the National League numbers-wise the second half. So we expect in the long run, these guys are all going to they have talent. They have amazing talent. It's a terrific young group, but this stuff isn't linear. It's not just you bring them all back and they're automatically going to pick up where they left off, or in some cases like Ellie De La Cruz, improve. So if 2 of them hit pretty good and improve off of what they did last year, that's a hell of a percentage. And so when you look at it, Joey Votto's gone, and he was at the tail end of his career anyway at that point. Jonathan India was hurt for a chunk of last year. He's been subject of trade talks, not just rumors, actual trade talks since the deadline period last year. The way it looks now, he'll be there, but they don't have much experience. They don't have much bankable experience in that lineup. You start breaking it down, and if guys break down, where are you going to go? And he's also a switch hitter, which gives them they might be the most platoon-oriented lineup in baseball. I mean, they're almost like hockey shifts the way they go. They'll start a lineup for a right-hander, start a lineup for a left-hander, and then once the bullpen comes in and once they read what's in the bullpen, they'll start putting their next line in. Because they don't have that monster left-hander to build the lineup around. They don't have that guy yet. They have a core that maybe one of these guys becomes that guy. But that's why an experienced guy like Jeimer Candelario, who is a nice, doubles power, gap power at Great American Ballpark. The idea is that some of those 42 doubles he hit that led the American League a couple of years ago go over the fence. And now he becomes a power threat. He's a switch hitter. He can play every day. He can play multiple positions for you. And you can do more with pieces. And my guess is one of these guys that we're talking a lot about starts the year at AAA.
Gordon, do they have too many prospects? Do they overvalue their prospects? Because we've heard about India getting traded, right? And he's still there. Votto's obviously gone. But you have De La Cruz, Encarnacion Strand. You've got all these infield prospects that they've built up. And they have some now at multiple positions. You bring in Jeimer Candelario to play, I guess, first base, I'm guessing?
First and third. I mean, they really don't. I mean, Noelvi Marte played third. Ellie De La Cruz can play third. But again, these guys are question marks. And he might. Okay.
So why not trade some of these guys for starting pitching depth? Why not make a trade with, like, the Brewers? I know they're in the division. Or the White Sox and get a Dylan Cease. Or
well, I'll give you.
Do they
As
overvalue these guys, and are they going to hold on to them for too long, and then they're going to be like, "Oh crap, we missed the boat"?
That's the question. That's a great question, because how many times do you get a crop like this and everybody hits? AJ, you were part of a group like that came up in Minnesota, and maybe and they were under the radar. Your group was under the radar compared to these guys. Very talented group, and that group wound up winning. Right? They wound up winning division titles and performing. How many times do you see a group come up and everybody hits? It just and for how long, right? So I think that's the danger here. I do think there's been some of that in play, and I think because they're a smaller revenue team, they feel maybe a little more like they have to hold on to guys, or they can't make mistakes the way some other teams can. So, but they look, I criticized them a lot at the trade deadline. My thinking was, you're in a place that they were in first place at the trade deadline, and it's a shock. Nobody expected that. They lost 100 games the year before, but you could win 90 the next year and not get in the playoffs. You're there now. This opportunity is right there, and if you got a starting pitcher, that could put you over the top the way that team was playing. It was lightning in a bottle with that group at that moment. And I thought that you should pick the guy that you identify the guy who, for whatever reason, doesn't project as high as some of the other guys in your internal analysis, or a guy that maybe doesn't project to have a position fit as well, or an offensive fit as well as what for what you want to do going forward, and make that guy the centerpiece of something. And go get a starting pitcher, and they didn't do it, and they fell 2 games short of the playoffs. They went out and bolstered some of their areas of need. They should be in the mix again, especially in this division so far, the way it looks. But to my original point, no guarantees. And I do think that overvaluing all of these guys could wind up being an issue at some point. But also, I'll throw this in too. AJ, you mentioned the White Sox and Dylan Cease. They talked to the White Sox about Dylan Cease. White Sox wanted a boatload of these guys. They wanted their top pitching prospect, Connor Phillips. They wanted, was it not? I think they asked. They might have mentioned McLean. They're not going to get McLean. They wanted Encarnacion Strand. Anyway, there's 4 guys. 3 of them were like top prospects, and 2 guys. At least 2 guys that were in their big league plans going forward. The ask was just incredibly high, too high. I mean, too high even for me, and I'm aggressive.
All right, so here we go. Spring training's done with. Let's go in the future here. Everybody's healthy. Give me your starting lineup and give me the guys who's going to be there and who's not. Who's going to be in AAA?
Wow. They starting a lefty or a righty against them?
Well, who do they open up with? Do you know offhand?
I think it's the Nats.
All right, so we'll go
Patrick
righty.
Corbin.
We'll go Corbin then. We'll go lefty.
Okay, so
Infield. I just need the infield here. Who we got?
Oh, the infield. I'll just give you. I think the infield will be. McLean's going to be in there. Jeimer's going to be in there.
Where though? Where?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I took a lot of heat for this. I've been asking about Ellie De La Cruz, the way he finished, and could he be a candidate to open at AAA? I think going into spring, he's got to prove he deserves a spot in the opening lineup, because there's no reason to baby him or use him against matchups. This guy's got to play. He's got so much talent. Oh my God. Even when he wasn't playing well, there were things he did in a game. He helped him win at least 2 games down the stretch when he wasn't hitting worth a damn. So, I mean, he's got such ability. They want him in there. They want to find a way to have him in there. And if so, he'd probably be at short and McLean would be at second. Otherwise, McLean would be at short. And then Noelvi Marte, he blew a hamstring in winter ball. So there's a chance he could be a little delayed as spring training opens. They expect him to be ready for opening day, but he's the least experienced of that group. He could be a candidate to open it at AAA, but otherwise he could be the third baseman, and Encarnacion Strand could be the first baseman, and Jeimer could be your DH. Otherwise, one of those guys is at AAA. You shift a guy over to third, and Indy is your DH, or Indy is your first baseman if Encarnacion isn't the guy, or Jeimer's your first baseman. I mean, these are the things that they'll be. The infield's easy because they're all right-handers or switch hitters when it comes to starting against a lefty. But these are the questions. So,
Yeah.
and Todd, you know this. I mean, you know the Reds pretty well. This is how they operate. You know, we can make some pretty educated guesses on how the top four would look against a lefty or a righty in the lineup. But as far as who's going to be at what position on the infield, these are all the things that they're going to sort out, and it will probably change sometimes week to week.
And my other question to that is, these guys as coming up as youngsters, it happened to me too as well. I never had a solidified spot until a couple years in. And honestly, I think that hindered me a little bit because you don't know where you're playing. You're coming in trying to figure out, am I a third? Am I in left? Am I playing second, first, wherever that is? I think they need to solidify where at least 2 or 3 of these guys are getting the most playing time. You know, McClain, whether it's McClain at second, De La Cruz is short, and you know whoever you put at third and first, that's fine. Mix and match in third and first, fine. But I think you need to solidify the middle guys because that's only going to help these youngsters. Like, all right, well, I know this is mine now. Now I can just go hit. Understood? You know?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that if Ellie De La Cruz establishes himself, that takes care of itself because then he's the shortstop for now, and McClain's the second baseman. They got Edwin Arroyo in the system coming. A lot of people think he's the best shortstop in the organization, and that Ellie De La Cruz might even wind up, he might wind up in center field at some point or somewhere off of the dirt. And Edwin Arroyo could be their long-term shortstop. But if you're looking at this year and Ellie De La Cruz is ready to go and they believe in him, I think you have your stability this year in the middle.
All right. Todd loves his hitting, but the reality is this team is going to run on pitching. Who of the current 5 starters, I don't want you to guess who they're going to trade for or sign a free agent, Stroman or nobody or whatever.
No, they're done.
Who needs to step up more from this staff that is already there on the 40-man roster currently?
That's easy. Hunter Green. Graham Ashcraft took a step forward last year. And toward the end, when they really needed somebody, he stepped up and he actually pitched his last couple of starts with a broken toe, trying to stay in there when they desperately needed pitching. I think he showed a lot. He also went through a rough stretch in May and rebounded from that. I think he's a guy that has already proven something. Nick Lodolo, he might be the best of the bunch. Was hurt all year long, so what he has to prove is health, and then go from there. But Hunter Green is the guy that got paid last year. He was the opening day starter. He's the first round draft pick. He's the guy with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And the only thing, location with this guy. And coming in and he has shown glimpses of brilliance. But, glimpses are one of those curse words, right? And this guy can be that good all the time, but he's got to do it every 5 days. He's the guy that if he does that, well, first of all, if he did that last year, even taking away the IL stretches, maybe they make the playoffs, honestly. They were that close, and pitching was that big of a deal, starting pitching in particular. So if he can do that this year and take that step forward, that's huge. If Nick Lodolo is healthy, that's huge. They're not counting on any one of these things being the factor. But that's why they went out and got this depth. If Nick Martinez makes good on his pledge to be in every fifth day starter and do perform kind of like he did for the Padres last year when he started, even though he wasn't stretched out for a lot of those starts, then even close to that, then that's huge for them. Montas Montas. I'm sorry, we got the pronunciation right on that yesterday. He's if he's healthy, we know what he can do. I mean, even recently, we know what he can do if he's healthy. But these are all ifs. Like every single one of these guys has a massive if And every single one of these guys has an upside that if you saw it, it would be a difference maker.
Gordon, I've known you for 25 plus years now, since you were back with the Twins. Back when you used to blast me when I was with the Twins, and then when I went to the White Sox, you blasted me more. And then you went to the Cubs and took more shots at me, and then you continued that.
I didn't blast you when you were with the Braves.
No, because we were awful and nobody cared about us, which is fine. That's fine. Actually, you did. You tried, and then I shut you up because I told you the truth. You did, and then I told you the real story, and you were like, "Okay, that makes more sense."
Yeah, good point. Good point.
So,
well, see, the truth.
Which,
will
by
set
the way,
you free.
John Lester and I had a nice chat about that last year. I think we played golf together, and we talked about it. So now we're friends again. So thank you. It was all because you blasted me in the newspaper. But that's not the point.
Anytime, man.
Thanks, buddy. Here's the point. You put out a tweet about the Reds that spent all this money, $105 million, the Cardinals, and then at the end you took your little jab at your old employer, the Cubs. Zip.
Hey, they're not. They were never my employer.
There it is.
Zip.
There it is. Look. Zip.
Dude,
are the Cubs going to do anything this year?
That's ridiculous. That's 2 full months into free agency, and a team that has more ability to spend than anybody else was in on some guys, is hesitant, is waiting for the market to come. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but they're going to find. They're going to spend eventually. They're going to add some players. What's the question?
The question was not just a shot. That's just. I'm like a lawyer, Gordon. I was establishing a pattern of behavior, right?
Yes.
And then it got to the point. And I know you didn't work for the Cubs. I know you worked for I think the Trib, right? Chicago Trib.
Sometimes.
Okay. You and Joe Cali, so it makes sense. Okay, you guys, you take your little jabs here and there. It's cool. I get it. We've had our ups and downs.
Was it not accurate?
No, I was. But I was just don't get mad. We're just having a conversation. It's all good fun. We were just establishing a pattern of, how do I say this, bad judgment on your part, or I don't know. But it was just a fun time, and plus it got under your skin. So for the first time ever, Gordon, I got under your skin, so I win. So I don't care. You can say whatever you want. The interview's over.
Oh, that's effed up, man. Look,
it is.
And I was rooting for Washington, and then you had that cup, and you keep displaying it every time you take a sip. So now apparently, there we go again. So now apparently I have to root for Michigan.
Let's go.
Yeah, look, that was an out of context tweet, right? The story that includes that
That's right. That's right.
The story that includes that information mentions that the Cubs are still expecting to add, whatever the hell that means. We'll find out. They expect to get a discount on Cody Bellinger or something. But it also points out that, honestly, the Reds spending isn't because they got aggressive. It's not because ownership said, hey, let's go spend and win because we came so close last year. It's because they haven't spent a damn thing for 2 years. They've cut. Their payroll was among the lowest in the game. Well under what they're able to do budget-wise, but they had a plan in place, right? They're going to tear it all down, build it back up, tank for a year or two. They did it. And so now they got all these young guys that they're not paying anything to yet. They've only got one guy going into the offseason on a guaranteed contract, and that was Hunter Green. So this is the resources that they typically have. So it just so happens that this is where they are in their process, that it led to what looks like a big spending winter.
Are you guys done sniping at each other? Can I ask?
Hannah, we've been doing that for 25 years. It's no big deal.
This is a fascinating insight into the level of specificity that players remember in terms of coverage. I didn't realize how.
Oh, I'm very petty.
Yeah,
I'm very petty. Trust me.
It's good to know. All right, Gordon. You seem to think are the Reds? Well, let me start here. Are the Reds done? I think you alluded to that earlier. Are they done for the offseason with the spending? Do they have more to spend?
Yeah, I mean they'll pick up, waiver claims and invites to camp and things like that. But they're done with anything that's going to be in their lineup plans or their rotation plans or even their back end bullpen plans. They're done with all that.
So there's no Joey Votto reunion coming.
I don't think so. I that would take a I mean, that would take one hell of a needle to thread at this point on both sides. Look, when they could have brought him back, he's the kind of a guy, that means so much to a franchise for a generation that a lot of times, you want to see him finish his career. They could have brought him back. But for a lot of the things we already talked about, a lot of the reasons we already talked about, he wasn't going to play every day, unless he found, some resurgent, factor of fountain of youth or something. If he did what he did in 2021, but where he was in his career, even healthy, probably he wasn't going to play every day, and they certainly couldn't commit that to him. So once that was the case, there was an amount of this decision that was mutual of him not coming back. Now he wants to play, and if you're Joey Votto right now and you want to play, you don't have that much time under the best circumstances. You want to go somewhere where they're going to commit a job to you, and so we'll see what happens. I thought Pittsburgh might be a fit, until they filled some of their needs there. I thought Toronto would be a fit for all kinds of reasons, his hometown, and they had needs. The Brandon Belt spot, but I don't know what's going to happen with him at this point.
Let me ask you this: with Votto, have you seen his latest tweet that he's been posting online?
Which one? Because
I mean, there's so many. There's ones about him talking about how he feels so lonely, like Sandra Bullock on what's the movie called? I'm just drawing a blank. Kratzy. Gravity. Like he's just floating away. Hey, that's how I felt, man, during free agency. It's a lonely feeling. It's tough. Like I was going to bring up the point, man. Why Blue Jays just signed him for a year? I think that would be a solid move, man, because he's a Canadian for one. Maybe he has a little resurgence. You never know. I just, but as you see,
there it is.
As we're showing the tweet here, as you see free agents, man, as you get older, nobody really wants you. And I think that's the tough part for him.
Yeah. You know him way better than I do. I was, so what do you think? Do you think he wants to go to Toronto? Like if they went and say, hey, we'd love to have you, it's going to be a little bit of a circus around him, at least for a while, and he's going to be the guy, the hometown guy there. And there's going to be a lot of attention. You think he wants that?
Would help. I think it would help with the team they have there with, the Guerreros and of those such guys. I think, to lean on somebody, that's been around the block for this long, I think that can only help. I don't see a problem with Bichette Jr. going up to Votto and being like, yo, man, talk to me about struggles. Talk to me about what you're doing in these situations. I think that would only help the team, especially the Blue Jays.
Oh, I think it would help the team for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think he wants to, like he would take to that role too, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah.
But what about does he want to be in the hometown spotlight at this point?
Oh, that's something else. I'm not sure. Maybe it's something he's like, you know what? Let me give it a try, just because, this might be his last year coming up. Once he does sign with somebody, or if he does. So I know he's not going to take a minor league deal, especially what he's been through. So it's either big show or no show.
Yeah, he shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I agree, man. We appreciate it.
You guys are talking about what the Blue Jays could add in him. So that leads me to want to ask about what the Reds are losing in him. I'm just looking at the Reds roster resource page and the ages of their position players. And we got Candelario at 30, but otherwise bunch of 22, 22, 24 with Votto gone.
Yeah.
Who is the veteran in the clubhouse?
No, you're right. I mean, it's Jonathan India, who was a rookie in 2021, right? It's Jeimer Candelario, who was non-tendered by the Tigers a few years ago. So, yeah, I was banging that drum for a while, all late summer, saying they should make a decision on this. They should bring him back. There was an option, $20 million option, a $7 million buyout. So it's $13 million decision. And we've already discussed that they were in a position that they had plenty of flexibility to spend. And they say this was not a a spending decision that they wound up making. But I said, yeah, for 1 year, for that 1 year, this is easy. You don't even have to negotiate with him on how many years it'll be. Pick up the 1 year option with this team being as young as it is. So many guys you're counting on that don't even have a full year in the big leagues left. Guys that already have a relationship with him and will tell you what he's already done for them in their careers to prepare them for their success in the big leagues. I thought 1 more year of him around those guys being part of that group would have been a natural. They didn't see it that way because of all the numbers games and everything. And so this is where we are.
All right. Well, Gordon, thank you so much. This was, as it turns out, we had a lot to talk about with the Reds. I feel like we haven't been paying a ton of attention to them this offseason. Maybe we should have. There's depth to these conversations. Thank you so much for coming on.
You want to talk about Michael Penix Jr.?
Ooh. Oh, no, this is baseball only, Gordon. We're only allowed to talk about baseball. They get mad at me if I want to talk college football.
Oh, good. You knew what sport that was. I did not.
Yes, he's the quarterback for Washington.
AJ only talks about the SEC, so they're not playing anymore.
Yeah. How'd you not beat Florida State in that game?
Ooh. I didn't play, Gordon, so I don't know. I didn't play, so I don't know how they didn't win. I can't explain that.
You had them in the swamp. You had a lead.
But you know what? Gordon, I was at the game. You know what all I have to say is 63-3. Thank you. First time in my life I ever wanted Georgia to win a game. And gosh darn it, did they ever win that game. Thank you. Thank you, Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Gordon.
Talk to you after Monday.